birth.
I just asked you, baby, to tell me the truth.
We discovered a dead baby in the bathroom.
Oh my gosh.
I'm sorry. He came out at me and I didn't know what to do.
Lexi, I told you about this. I just asked you, baby, to tell me the truth.
It looked like you tried to hide it. We do have to have the police involved.
And that baby was crying. How big is the baby?
It's full term.
What?
She is Alexee Trevizo, just 19 years old. It's January 2023 in the small town of Artesia, New Mexico. Alexee walked into the hospital saying her back hurt. Doctors ran tests, and what they found stunned everyone. She wasn't just in pain, she was pregnant, already in labor. Moments later, in a bathroom at the hospital, Alexee gave birth. And when staff opened the door, they made a discovery that would divide an entire community. The newborn was gone, found inside a trash bag. Doctors accused her of doing it on purpose. Alexee cried, insisting she never even knew she was pregnant. Her mother stood by, just as shocked, unable to understand how this could have happened. How could things go this far? How could a 19-year-old not know she was pregnant? And what really happened in that toilets? Welcome to Caseborn. I want to take you inside that night, step by step. Alexee did not walk into the hospital alone. Her mother was right there, holding her arm, steadying her as they moved through the glass doors of the emergency entrance. The fluorescent lights were cold, the air smelled faintly of disinfectant, and the waiting room was nearly empty. Nurses at the front desk looked up, expecting another routine case. Her mother explained quickly. Her daughter had stomach pains, sudden and severe. Alexee clutched her side, face pale, lips pressed tight, her body folding slightly with each wave of pain. To the staff, it looked like a teenager in distress, but nothing about it suggested what was truly happening. A wheelchair was brought forward. Alexee lowered herself into it, avoiding eye contact, hands trembling on the armrests. The nurse pushed her down the hallway, her sneakers squeaking against the tiles, her mother following close behind, asking questions no one could answer yet. In a small examination room, Alexee was placed on the bed. A blood pressure cuff wrapped around her arm, a thermometer slid under her tongue. Numbers appeared on screens. The readings weren't alarming, not enough to explain the sharpness of her pain. A nurse asked, "How long have you felt like this? Where exactly does it hurt?" Alexee's answers were short, vague, evasive. She didn't know how to explain what she herself could barely comprehend. Minutes later, she excused herself. "I need the bathroom," she whispered, almost too soft to hear. The nurse pointed her down the hall to a door just a few feet away. Her footsteps echoed. The door closed. The lock clicked. At first, it seemed ordinary, but then the minutes began to stretch. 5, 10, 15. Too long. Nurses exchanged glances. One knocked. No answer. They called her name, voices rising, still nothing. Inside, the muffled sounds began. A stifled cry, almost like someone trying to hold back tears. Then a low groan, raw and human, followed by the unmistakable noise of something dropping to the floor. It wasn't clear, but it was urgent. Finally, the staff forced the door open. What they saw froze them in place. The sterile white of the bathroom was splattered with chaos. On the floor, wrapped in the folds of her hospital gown, Alexee crouched. A newborn child cradled in her arms. Her face was streaked with sweat, her eyes wide with shock as if she herself couldn't believe what had just happened. The nurses gasped. One stumbled back. Another immediately stepped forward, hands reaching, instinctively going for the baby. The cry of the infant filled the small room, shrill, desperate, undeniable. Her mother, who had followed close, now stood at the doorway. The sight shattered her. "Oh my God! Alexee!" Her voice broke, confusion and fear tangled together. She had no idea her daughter was pregnant. Not a single sign at home, no visible changes, no warning. Doctors rushed in. Gloves snapped on, voices overlapped. "We need blankets. Get the baby checked. How long has it been breathing? Clear the airway." Orders flew around the room, each second critical. And there, in the middle of it all, was Alexee, 17 years old. Silent tears streamed down her cheeks. Her body shook uncontrollably, part exhaustion, part terror. Nurses tried to steady her, but she resisted, clutching the child as if letting go would mean losing the last shred of control she had. The staff were not only treating an emergency, they were staring at a mystery. How had a teenage girl, admitted for stomach pain, ended up giving birth in their toilets? Why hadn't she said anything? Did she even know she was pregnant? Those questions filled the air heavier than the smell of antiseptic. Each pair of eyes in that room carried the same expression: disbelief. And as the newborn's cries echoed through the sterile corridors, the hospital was no longer just a place of healing. It had become the stage for a story none of them could have imagined. I'm taking you now into the courtroom and the whirlwind that followed the hospital incident. The moment when the private tragedy of a teenage girl collided with the public, legal world. The hospital had called the police almost immediately. Doctors, nurses, and staff, still reeling from the shock of what they had just witnessed, were now required to shift their focus. No longer were they only caregivers. They had become witnesses, participants in an unfolding criminal investigation. Phones rang continuously. Officers arrived, walking briskly through the emergency room, badges flashing, notepad in hand. The hospital, once a space of quiet urgency and healing, now buzzed with official tension. Alexee sat on a chair, shoulders tense, eyes darting between her mother, the medical staff, and the uniformed officers. Every so often, she fidgeted with the hem of her shirt, fingers curling and uncurling, a subtle rhythm of nervous energy. Her mother, usually a source of quiet reassurance, could only clutch the edge of the chair. Whispering words Alexee barely heard, a fragile attempt to anchor her daughter in a moment that felt completely unanchored. Questions were asked quickly, one after the other. When did you first notice discomfort? Had you experienced any symptoms? Were there any signs we should have known about? Alexee's answers came slowly, carefully, almost rehearsed, as if she were navigating a world she could barely comprehend herself. The officers documented every word. Every pause, every breath, every glance at the floor or at her mother was noted. Their pens scratched across forms and tablets with mechanical precision. Meanwhile, the hospital staff gave their statements, detailing exactly what they observed in the bathroom, the child's condition, and the timeline of events. They spoke professionally, but there was an undercurrent of disbelief in every description, a silent question lingering. How could this have happened without anyone knowing? Within days, charges were formally filed: first-degree murder and tampering with evidence. Suddenly, the teenager who had walked into the hospital with back pain was the subject of intense scrutiny and public attention. Court dates were set, paperwork was filed, and the once quiet corridors of Artesia began to buzz with rumors and speculation. The courtroom itself was a different world. Oak-paneled walls, high ceilings, and the faint smell of polished wood created an atmosphere both solemn and suffocating. Reporters crowded in the back, cameras poised, notebooks ready. Lawyers paced in the front, rehearsing lines, adjusting their ties and skirts, whispering last-minute reminders. Alexee entered the room, accompanied by her mother, and immediately felt the weight of every eye in the space. It pressed down, silent but inescapable. The prosecution rose first. Every word was deliberate, precise, aimed at constructing a narrative of intent. They outlined the events of that night, the discovery of the newborn, and the statements collected at the hospital. Their tone was calm, factual, yet heavy with implication. Each sentence painted Alexee as a figure capable of deliberate action, every gesture calculated. Charts, timelines, and medical notes were presented. The attorneys pointed to each piece of evidence with the confidence of someone who believed the story was self-evident. Alexee listened, hands folded in her lap, knuckles white. Her mother sat just behind her, trying to appear composed while her lips trembled with every accusation. Alexee's eyes flicked from the prosecution to the defense table, then to the judge. The room was a blur of faces, pens scratching on legal pads and the occasional cough echoing through the high ceilings. She felt the pull of every word, every claim, each one tugging at the fragile sense of reality she had left intact since that night in the hospital. When the defense spoke, the atmosphere shifted slightly. Their tone was measured, deliberate, almost conversational. They emphasized that Alexee had claimed she did not know she was pregnant, that her symptoms had been subtle, and that the hospital had failed to communicate clearly at multiple points. They painted a picture of a teenager trapped between her own lack of awareness, medical oversight, and the tragic consequences that followed. Witnesses were called to support this view: nurses, doctors, and family members, each providing snapshots that revealed confusion, human error, and the limits of knowledge in chaotic circumstances. The prosecution immediately countered. They questioned every witness carefully, highlighting inconsistencies, emphasizing what they argued were deliberate actions. Each rebuttal was designed to maintain a sense of urgency and suspicion. Their eyes scanned Alexee constantly, looking for a reaction, a sign of guilt, a tremor that might confirm their narrative. Alexee sat still, trying to breathe calmly to not allow her body to betray her. Throughout the proceedings, the jury remained attentive, leaning forward in their seats, absorbing every detail, every nuance. The lawyers paced, gesturing with hands, emphasizing points, occasionally pointing to documents or medical charts. Each movement, each word added to the tension. Every breath in the courtroom felt heavier, laden with unspoken questions. Alexee's mother shifted in her seat. She whispered encouragements now and then, soft words that could barely reach her daughter over the hum of the courtroom, the scribbling of notes, and the muted murmurs of the spectators. Medical witnesses described procedures, timelines, and observations in painstaking detail. The newborn was found in the bathroom at this time. The mother displayed these symptoms. The patient made these statements. Each line was dissected, analyzed, challenged. Every statement added weight, nuance, and yet uncertainty. Alexee remained in the center of it all, not passive but absorbing, listening, occasionally nodding in response, trying to follow the rhythm of the legal dance. Each day in court was a repetition, yet nothing became routine. The gravity of the accusations, first-degree murder and tampering with evidence, hung over every word, every gesture, every testimony. The defense called psychologists to testify about cryptic pregnancies, explaining how a young woman might be unaware of carrying a child until late in the term or even until labor begins. Charts, studies, and historical examples were cited. The prosecution challenged, questioning the reliability, the applicability, the credibility. Each rebuttal, each cross-examination intensified the uncertainty, forcing everyone in the room to hold their breath for answers that were never fully clear. Outside the courtroom, the story had already begun to ripple through the media. Reporters whispered in hallways, camera crews lined the streets, and community members gathered in small clusters, exchanging theories, judgments, and sympathy in equal measure. Alexee's life, once private, was now public property. Every gesture scrutinized, every glance dissected, every word potentially replayed endlessly. Inside, every day of the trial was a performance of patience, tension, and observation. Lawyers repeated arguments, witnesses retold stories, and Alexee sat, absorbing the full weight of the legal machinery. Every rebuttal, every objection from the judge, every scribble of a pen contributed to a rhythm that was both exhausting and relentless. Questions lingered constantly in the room. Could a 19-year-old really be unaware of a pregnancy? Was this a tragic accident or something deliberate? How could medical staff and the patient both be unaware and yet responsible? Each answer, partial or contested, only added new layers of uncertainty. And through it all, Alexee remained the center of attention, a teenager navigating a world of procedures, accusations, defenses, and observations. She answered when required, remained silent when necessary, her eyes sometimes meeting her mother's, a silent acknowledgement of shared fear, confusion, and hope. The courtroom, a space of strict rules and formal procedure, became almost cinematic in its intensity. Every whisper, every note passed, every subtle glance became part of the unfolding drama. And in that environment, the story of a teenager, a hospital incident, and the resulting charges transformed from a private tragedy into a public narrative, a legal battle, and a human mystery. I'm taking you now out of the courtroom and into the town of Artesia, where the story of Alexee Trevizo began to unfold beyond the hospital walls and into the public eye. News of the incident spread quickly. In small cafes, convenience stores, and high school hallways, conversations turned to whispers, and whispers to debates. People shook their heads in disbelief. Some expressed shock and sadness, others frustration or anger. How could this happen? How could a teenager not know she was pregnant? Questions like these hung in the air, unanswered, but repeated over and over, bouncing from person to person. Local reporters were first on the scene. Their cameras captured the hospital entrance, flashing lights, the occasional glimpse of officials or family members entering and leaving. Television segments ran repeatedly, showing only fragments: the parking lot, the doors, the brief interviews with bystanders. Every clip added to the tension, each cut carefully designed to highlight the drama, the mystery, the unanswered questions. Social media exploded. Hashtags appeared overnight, trending across local and national feeds. People argued about responsibility, the hospital's role, the teenager's awareness, the broader social context. Opinion pieces, threads, and videos dissected the situation, sharing timelines, medical facts, and speculation. Comments were intense, some expressing sympathy, others skepticism, a few veering into judgment. Each post, each reply added layers to the public narrative, amplifying both curiosity and tension. Community leaders weighed in. Church groups, schools, and advocacy organizations called for calm but demanded clarity. Statements were released about supporting young women, the importance of medical transparency, and understanding rare medical cases like cryptic pregnancies. Public meetings were held with parents, educators, and healthcare professionals discussing how such situations could occur and what could be done to prevent future tragedies. Meanwhile, the media continued its relentless coverage. Newspapers ran front-page stories, websites published deep dives into medical oversight, and national news programs interviewed experts about teenage pregnancies, hospital protocols, and legal ramifications. Every segment framed the story in new ways. Some focused on the legal battle, others on the human element, Alexee's youth, her confusion, the role of her family, and the broader societal questions raised. Online forums became microcosms of debate. People dissected timelines, questioned procedures, shared similar stories, and argued about accountability. It was as if the entire town, and beyond, was holding its collective breath, trying to piece together a narrative from fragments of information. Each new article, each social media post added to the complexity, creating a sense of suspense, tension, and urgency that matched the courtroom drama. The local community also became a participant in the story. People approached city officials, asking what policies could be reviewed or updated. Teen programs and schools began discussions on reproductive health awareness. Parents discussed the story with their children, sometimes in hushed tones, sometimes openly, trying to balance education with caution. Each reaction, each conversation, carried weight, an echo of the courtroom drama extending into everyday life. Meanwhile, Alexee's mother navigated a sea of attention herself. She received calls, messages, and interviews she neither requested nor fully welcomed. She tried to protect her daughter, offering statements to the press only when necessary, and always carefully measured. She spoke about confusion, disbelief, and the need to understand medical realities, never straying into blame or accusation. As the media frenzy grew, the story became a lens through which broader social issues were examined. Healthcare responsibility, teenage awareness, and societal support systems were debated nationally. Experts weighed in on podcasts, news shows, and online panels. Every discussion reinforced the mystery and suspense surrounding the incident, asking questions that had no easy answers. How could something so extraordinary happen without notice? What should institutions do differently? How does society respond to tragedy layered with uncertainty? Even as Alexee's legal process continued, the public watched, dissected, and debated. Every court appearance, every testimony, every argument was filtered through the lens of the town, the state, and the nation. Public opinion swayed with new information, moments of empathy emerging alongside skepticism and concern. And through it all, the suspense never fully dissipated. The public waited for answers, for clarity, for understanding, yet the story retained its tension, its layers of uncertainty, and its human drama. People discussed, argued, and reflected, each action, each post, each conversation a ripple in the larger narrative that had begun on that night in a hospital bathroom in Artesia. I'm taking you now inside the medical mystery that puzzled everyone, the phenomenon known as cryptic pregnancy. Doctors, nurses, and experts in adolescent health explained it cautiously. A cryptic pregnancy occurs when a person carries a baby for months without realizing it. Symptoms can be subtle or mistaken for other conditions. Menstrual cycles may continue, weight gain might be minimal, and common signs like nausea or fatigue can be attributed to stress or illness. In Alexee's case, months passed without any obvious changes. Back pain, stomach cramps, occasional fatigue, none of it flagged as unusual to her or her family. Even medical checkups failed to reveal the full picture until that fateful day in the hospital bathroom. Medical experts described how the body can mask pregnancy in remarkable ways. Hormone levels fluctuate differently for each individual. The uterus may expand slowly, symptoms may be irregular, and the mind itself can unconsciously ignore subtle changes. Every factor combined can lead to a teenager going through nearly the entire pregnancy unaware of what is happening inside her body. This is where the mystery deepened. How could someone so young, so seemingly healthy, reach the final stages of pregnancy without noticing? Nurses, doctors, and psychologists explained that cryptic pregnancies, while rare, are recognized in medical literature. They occur more often than people realize, and in many cases, the person involved is genuinely unaware. Not negligent, not deceptive, simply unaware. The implications are profound. For the public, it's astonishing. For medical professionals, it's a reminder of human complexity and the limits of routine observation. For Alexee, it was a reality that turned her world upside down in an instant, leaving her to navigate shock, confusion, and the sudden responsibility of an unexpected child. Experts emphasized that cryptic pregnancy does not imply wrongdoing. It challenges assumptions about bodily awareness and highlights how unpredictable the human body can be. In classrooms, on news panels, and through interviews, professionals illustrated that awareness of pregnancy is not always straightforward, and that sometimes the most ordinary symptoms hide extraordinary truths. Even the community following the story began to grasp this complexity. People who initially assumed intentionality started to consider medical explanations. Conversations shifted from judgment to curiosity. How could this happen? How does the body mask a pregnancy? What signs could be missed even by doctors? In this light, the story of Alexee Trevizo became not just a legal case, but a lesson in human biology, medical mystery, and the unexpected ways life can unfold. Cryptic pregnancy added a layer of suspense and disbelief, an element that made an already shocking story even harder to comprehend, even for professionals trained to expect the unexpected. And so, while the courtroom debated intent and responsibility, the hospital staff, the community, and viewers alike were forced to confront a reality that seemed almost impossible. A teenager carrying a child for months, unaware, until the moment it arrived in a small hospital bathroom. I'm taking you now inside my thoughts as I reflect on everything that has unfolded. I sit quietly, imagining Alexee in those moments after the storm. The hospital emptied, the cameras gone, the courtroom silenced. I can feel the weight she must carry, a 19-year-old navigating consequences she never anticipated. I think of her mother, sitting close, whispering words of comfort that can barely touch the magnitude of what happened, yet still trying. As I watch, I realize how fragile our understanding of the human body can be. How a teenager might go months unaware of a pregnancy, how a body can mask what seems obvious, and how quickly life can change in a single, unexpected moment. I imagine the medical staff replaying their decisions, analyzing every step, every action, wondering if something else could have been done, yet constrained by the limits of knowledge and circumstance. I feel the tension in the courtroom, the eyes of the jury, the whispers of reporters outside. I imagine the swirl of public opinion, social media debates, and news cycles, each reaction layering pressure on top of an already impossible situation. And through it all, I try to hold Alexee at the center, a young woman caught in the crossfire of mystery, law, and human emotion. I think about the baby, quiet and unaware, and the incredible fragility of new life. I think about what it means to be responsible, to care, to observe, and to support. I see the threads of empathy in the actions of her mother, the measured steps of nurses, and the careful explanations of medical professionals trying to illuminate a rare phenomenon, cryptic pregnancy. As I reflect, I feel the importance of reproductive health, of attentive care, and of understanding that the human body can surprise us in ways we never expect. I see lessons not as judgment, but as guidance, a reminder to watch, listen, and respond with compassion. I imagine the conversations happening in living rooms, schools, and clinics. People ask questions, discuss the unknown, and seek understanding. I feel the suspense of uncertainty lingering in their minds, just as it lingers in mine. Each conversation, each reflection, adds another layer to the story, human, complex, and never fully resolved. And as I sit here, I feel the empathy that ties it all together. I feel the responsibility, the fragility, and the human connections that run through this story. I know that judgment has no place here, only observation, care, and reflection. Even as I finish recounting these thoughts, I feel the echoes of that night, the courtroom, and the public attention. I feel the tension, the fragility, and the unexpected turns of life, and I hold in my mind the image of a teenager, a mother, a newborn, and a community trying to understand the unimaginable, while reminding myself that compassion and empathy are what carry us through even the most confounding mysteries. I'm bringing you now to the final moments of this story, a moment to take a breath and reflect. Alexee Trevizo's case is a rare and extraordinary journey. A teenager unaware of her pregnancy, a newborn discovered in a hospital bathroom, and the whirlwind of legal, medical, and public attention that followed. It's a story of mystery, of human fragility, and of the unexpected ways life can unfold. Through every twist, from the hospital incident to the courtroom, from the media spotlight to the medical mystery of cryptic pregnancy, we've followed actions, reactions, and the complex layers of human experience. Each moment shows how reality can challenge assumptions, and how compassion and understanding remain essential, even in situations that seem impossible. If this story made you pause, question, or reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below. What surprised you most about Alexee's journey? How do you see the role of awareness, support, and medical care in situations like this? And if you want to explore more stories like this, real, immersive, and told at the heart of the action, make sure to subscribe to Caseborn. Hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next story. Every tale is a step into understanding the complex, sometimes mysterious and always human experiences that shape our world. Thank you for joining me today and for taking the time to see this story through with empathy, attention, and curiosity.